The void was never meant to be silent. In the depths of the barren expanse, a stretch of starless darkness feared even by the boldest voyagers, silence had become a death knell. For centuries, the expanse was a place to be avoided, a wound in the galaxy where light itself seemed hesitant to shine. Yet it was here that the Calvith Dominion's grand fleet, an armada of 500 warships, resplendent with banners of gold and silver, had come to an abrupt and terrible halt. Their engines had failed in unison. Their communications had fractured into static. Their navigation arrays spun endlessly, reading nothing but emptiness. And so, the once mighty fleet that had terrorized half the spiral arm drifted like broken leaves upon a black tide. Admiral Serac Valen stood at the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial Sovereign, and stared into the abyss beyond the viewport. He had led campaigns across 6 quadrants, reduced civilizations to ash, and carried the Dominion's will into countless systems. But now? He was nothing more than a prisoner of the dark. "Status report," Serac demanded, his voice like gravel. The officer at the console swallowed hard. "Same as before, Admiral. Core reactors remain unresponsive. We cannot repair them. No power, no FTL drive, no ability to sustain long-term life support. We are stranded." The words hit the bridge like a stone thrown into still water. None dared meet the Admiral's gaze. The fleet had been here for 47 cycles already. Supplies dwindled. Desperation grew. And whispers of revolt, whispers of curses, whispers of the gods abandoning them, were spreading like infection. Serac clenched his fists behind his back. The Dominion had never known helplessness. Yet here, in the silence, they were learning it in cruel lessons. He refused to let his crew see his doubt. An admiral could never bleed, never falter. Then, in the stillness of the dark, something happened. "Admiral," the comms officer gasped, his eyes wide. Signal detected. Heads turned sharply. For weeks, they had received nothing but the eerie drone of their own systems. Now, a flicker of hope. "Identify," Serac ordered. The officer hesitated. His voice trembled as he spoke. "Not Calvith. Not Dominion. Unknown, alien." A murmur spread across the bridge. Unknown. That single word carried weight. In the Dominion's arrogance, they believed they knew the catalog of all major spacefaring species. To encounter something beyond their record, here, in this abyss, was unthinkable. The signal grew stronger. It wasn't a distress call, nor a warning. It was melodic. A strange cascade of tones, carried across subspace like a haunting song. And then the scanners caught sight of them. Ships. Not warships, not like the Dominion's proud vessels, but angular carriers of steel and light, their hulls painted with blues and whites that gleamed even in the void. They moved with precision, as if every motion was choreographed. At their head was a colossal craft unlike anything Serac had ever seen, a floating city wrapped in silver latticework, humming with energy. The bridge fell silent. "Identify them." Serac barked, though his voice carried more uncertainty than command. The officer's hands flew across the console, then froze. "Admiral, the translation systems are working. Their designation, they call themselves humanity." Serac narrowed his eyes. Humanity. He had never heard of them. How could such a fleet exist in secret? How could a species bold enough to pierce the expanse have gone unnoticed by the Dominion? The melodic transmission shifted. Words emerged, carefully translated into the Dominion tongue. "This is the United Terran Fleet. You are stranded. We detected your distress. We offer assistance." For the first time in Serac's career, he did not know how to respond. The Dominion was prideful, merciless. Accepting aid from unknown aliens, creatures they had likely dismissed as primitives in the past, was unthinkable. Yet his fleet was dying. Already, food riots had broken out on 2 ships. Already, whispers of cannibalism haunted the shadows of the supply bays. And these humans, they offered salvation. Serac, second in command, Commander Lyrak, stepped closer. "Admiral, with respect, if we refuse, we perish. Our ships cannot last another cycle." The Admiral's jaw tightened. The weight of pride and survival warred within him. On the comms, the human voice repeated, calm and resolute, "We offer assistance." Serac exhaled slowly, his breath fogging against the viewport's cold glass. "Open a channel. Let us hear these humans." As the comms link flared to life, a new voice filled the bridge, steady, confident, strangely warm. "This is Admiral Elena Ramirez of the United Terran Fleet," the voice said. "We detected your malfunction. We know you are dying. Let us help." Serac stared into the void where her ships hovered like sentinels of light. His pride screamed against it, but in his bones, he knew, without them, the Dominion would wither into dust. The abyss had swallowed his fleet. But perhaps, these strangers had brought a thread of light. The choice before him would shape the fate of both peoples. The docking clamps shuddered as the human vessel locked against the Imperial Sovereign. For the Calvith crew, the sound was unnatural, almost predatory. Every soldier along the corridors braced, weapons at the ready, as the airlock cycled. The Dominion had never allowed outsiders to set foot upon its warships, and now, desperation had forced their hand. Admiral Serac Valen stood at the forefront, towering in ceremonial armor despite the failing power around him. His face was carved in stone, his posture one of authority. Yet beneath the steel mask of discipline, his thoughts churned like a storm. The humans were here. Unknown. Unvetted. Uninvited, yet necessary. The airlock hissed open. From the mist of pressurized steam emerged 3 figures. They wore sealed suits of white composite, each marked with blue insignias shaped like a spiraling planet. Their helmets retracted with a quiet hiss, revealing alien faces, yet not grotesque, not monstrous. They were, unsettlingly familiar. 2 eyes. A nose. A mouth. Flesh colored by warm tones of brown, copper, and pale ivory. Their expressions were sharp, but not hostile, measured calm, a soldier's control. The lead figure, a woman, removed her gloves and extended her hand. "Admiral Serac Valen," she said in perfect Dominion speech, her accent slight but clear. "I am Admiral Elena Ramirez of the United Terran Fleet. We come with aid." A ripple of unease spread through the Calvith ranks. No alien had ever spoken their tongue with such clarity. No alien had ever met their gaze without lowering their head in reverence, or fear. Serac did not take her hand. He let silence stretch, a tension wound tight as wire. Then, at last, he spoke. "You presume much, human. This is the flagship of the Dominion. You stand here not as guests, but as intruders tolerated only by necessity." Ramirez's eyes did not waver. Her hand lowered slowly, but her voice remained steady. "Then let necessity be our bridge. Your ships are failing. Your crew will not last another cycle. Ours can provide energy, food, water. Medicine." At the word medicine, Serac's gaze sharpened. Sickness had spread through the lower decks. His own medics were powerless, their supplies spent. Pride clawed at him, but reality was merciless. Behind him, Commander Lyrak murmured low enough for only Serac to hear. "Admiral, if they speak truth, we cannot refuse." Ramirez gestured to her team. One unlatched a sealed crate, revealing glimmering cylinders of nutrient paste and portable hydropacks. Another displayed a device humming with faint blue light. "This is a compact fusion stabilizer," Ramirez explained. "We can restart your auxiliary reactors, bring life support back to full capacity. It will not restore FTL, but it will buy you time. The Calvith officers stared, their eyes wide with disbelief. The Dominion's engineers had declared their cores beyond saving, yet here were these strangers, offering a solution pulled from their crates like conjurers of light. Sirac's jaw tightened. The abyss was forcing his hand. Slowly, he inclined his head. Very well. Your aid is accepted. For now. Ramirez nodded once, crisp and professional. Then let us begin. The corridors of the Imperial Sovereign groaned with the march of human engineers. Wherever they went, the Dominion soldiers followed, weapons raised, eyes sharp with distrust. The humans worked in silence, methodical, attaching their stabilizers, rewiring conduits, feeding lines of energy into dead arteries of steel. Within hours, the ship stirred. Lights flickered awake. Air scrubbers hummed to life. Heat returned to the freezing decks. For the first time in nearly 50 cycles, the crew felt the touch of warmth. Cries of relief echoed. Some wept openly, clutching the nearest bulkheads as though embracing salvation itself. Yet their eyes never strayed far from the humans, those pale strangers who had done in hours what Dominion engineers had failed to achieve in weeks. In the command chamber, Sirac watched from his throne-like chair as status screens surged back online. His officers whispered in awe. But he felt only unease. Admiral, Ramirez's voice interrupted his thoughts. She stood beside him, her presence both steady and disquieting. Your fleet is stabilizing. But supplies are critical. We can transfer food and water from our carriers, enough to sustain your population until repairs are possible. Sirac turned to face her. His eyes, narrow and predatory, studied every detail of her alien face. Why? He asked. His voice was low, almost a growl. Why risk yourselves for us? You do not know us. You owe us nothing. What drives humanity to bleed resources for strangers? Ramirez met his gaze without flinching. Her answer was simple. Because once, we were stranded too. And no one came. The bridge fell silent. Even Lyrac froze at the words. The Dominion was built upon conquest and dominance. They did not understand mercy, only tribute. To hear this alien admit weakness, yet turn it into reason for compassion, was disorienting. Sirac leaned forward, his voice sharp. Mercy is a weakness. Aid without profit is a liability. What is your true intention, human? Ramirez's expression hardened. Survival. Not just yours, ours. The galaxy is vast. If we let others fall, one day there will be no one left when we need help again. The word struck Sirac like a blade. He wanted to dismiss them, to mock them as naive. Yet deep in the marrow of his being, he knew they carried a truth the Dominion had long buried. Still, pride was a fortress. You presume to lecture me, Ramirez, Sirac said coldly. Do not mistake our desperation for gratitude. Aid us, yes, but do not think the Dominion will kneel. Ramirez's lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile. Not mocking, not cruel. A smile of someone who had heard such defiance before. We don't want you to kneel, she said softly. We just don't want you to die. By the end of the next cycle, the humans had distributed food across a dozen ships. Riots that once burned in the shadows faded into uneasy order. The sick were treated with strange alien serums that calmed fevers and soothed broken lungs. Children who had grown thin from hunger now clutched warm ration packs in trembling hands. The Dominion had been brought back from the edge of extinction. But Sirac could feel the shift, subtle yet undeniable. His people looked upon the humans with something alien, something dangerous. Not fear. Not hatred. Hope. And hope, Sirac knew, was harder to control than despair. As he stood before the viewport, watching the human fleet glimmer like a constellation of salvation, a quiet dread crept into him. The Dominion had been saved, but at what cost to its pride? What chain had he allowed upon his people's necks, hidden behind the guise of mercy? The abyss had not claimed them. But perhaps, it had delivered them into another's hands. And Serac Vailn, Admiral of the Dominion, was not certain if this salvation was truly a gift, or the beginning of something far greater, and far more dangerous. The Varen expanse remained unchanged, an abyss without stars, a silence without end. Yet within its darkness, the Dominion's fleet lived again. Engines hummed, life support thrummed, and crew members moved with strength renewed. What had seemed certain death only cycles ago had been replaced with survival. But survival came at a cost. Admiral Serac Vailn could feel it in the air, heavy as a storm. His crew no longer looked to him with the same desperate reverence. Their eyes, once hollow with despair, now glimmered with something he had not seen in decades. Trust, not in him, but in the strangers who had walked their decks. The humans. He had watched them closely, engineers in white suits mending conduits with impossible ease, medics treating plague victims with patience and care, officers sharing rations with starving children as though such generosity cost them nothing. They asked for no payment. They demanded no tribute. And yet, Serac's instincts screamed. Nothing was free. Every action in the galaxy carried weight, consequence, and intent. Commander Lyrak approached as Serac brooded over the tactical display. "Admiral," she said quietly, "reports confirm stabilization across the fleet. Food and water supplies are secure for 3 cycles. The people, they live again." Her voice held relief, perhaps even admiration. Serac's hand tightened on the edge of the console. "They live because of aliens. Outsiders. Strangers whose motives we cannot know." Lyrak hesitated, then pressed carefully. "And does that matter? Without them, we would be corpses drifting in the void. Surely survival outweighs pride." Serac turned sharply, his eyes burning. "Pride is survival. Without it, the Dominion is nothing. Do not forget that." Lyrak bowed her head, though her silence carried quiet defiance. Serac hated that he noticed it. The humans convened with Serac in the council chamber of the Imperial Sovereign. Admiral Elena Ramirez stood at the table, her officers beside her. Between them lay holographic schematics, Dominion ships entwined with Terran stabilizers, a lifeline of alien technology sustaining vessels once thought dead. "Your fleet is stable now," Ramirez said, her voice measured. "But you are still stranded. Your FTL cores remain silent. Without hyperspace, you will never leave the expanse." Murmurs filled the chamber. Fear rippled through Dominion officers like cracks in glass. Serac raised a hand, silencing them, his gaze fixed on Ramirez. "And you, human? You claim to have crossed the expanse. How?" Ramirez did not answer immediately. She touched the hologram, and the display shifted, showing Terran ships weaving through the abyss with currents of light spiraling behind them. "We discovered a method," she said at last. "A resonance drive, guided by gravity waves. It allows us to navigate this void safely." The room erupted. Dominion officers shouted over one another, voices sharp with anger and disbelief. Serac's chest constricted. The expanse had been a curse upon the galaxy for millennia, a barrier none could breach. If humanity truly commanded such power, then they held dominion over the abyss itself. "And now you see," Ramirez continued, her voice rising above the din, "we could leave you here. We could vanish into the dark and let your fleet wither. But we choose not to. We choose to stay." Her words fell heavy, echoing against the chamber walls. Serac stood slowly, his presence commanding silence. "And what do you demand for this choice?" Ramirez's eyes softened, and for the first time, her voice carried something almost fragile. "Nothing. Only this: remember that when we reached out, it was not with chains. It was with a hand. The chamber froze. No tribute. No conquest. Just aid. But to Serac, that answer was worse than any demand. For what power was more dangerous than mercy freely given? What chain was heavier than one forged of gratitude? The turning point came sooner than Serac expected. A riot erupted on the warship crest of Dominion. Not of hunger, not of sickness, but of ideology. Soldiers clashed in the halls, one side chanting for independence, the other crying for alliance with humanity. Blades and plasma fire stained the decks. Serac crushed the riot swiftly, but the damage was done. The Dominion was fracturing, not from weakness, but from hope. Hope that perhaps there was a path beyond conquest. Hope that perhaps mercy was not weakness. And Serac feared that hope more than despair. That night, as the void pressed against the windows of his quarters, Ramirez found him standing alone. "You fear what we've done," she said quietly. Serac did not turn. "Fear? No. I fear nothing. But I see what you bring. Division. Doubt. You unravel us with kindness more swiftly than any blade." Ramirez stepped closer, her reflection beside his in the viewport's glass. "Then let me ask you, Admiral, what is the Dominion without conquest? What is power if it cannot protect its people?" He turned sharply, his voice a snarl. "It is survival. Dominion survives because we take. Because we bow to no one." Ramirez's gaze held his, unflinching. "And yet here you stand, alive because we gave. Not because you took." The silence between them was a blade's edge. Serac wanted to rage, to strike, to silence her words with fury. But in the hollow of his chest, something cracked. For the first time, he wondered if survival meant more than conquest. When dawn came, if dawn could be measured in the timeless dark of the expanse, the Dominion fleet sailed once more. Guided by Terran resonance drives, their ships moved through the abyss like shadows tethered to light. As the void thinned and the stars returned, Serac stood upon the bridge, watching the galaxy bloom once more before him. His people cheered. They had been delivered from death. Ramirez's voice echoed over comms, "You are free now, Admiral. Your path is your own again." Serac stared at her ship, gleaming silver against the stars. His pride burned, demanding he cut ties, erase this shame from the Dominion's memory. And yet, his people looked upon those ships with reverence. With hope. Perhaps salvation was not weakness. Perhaps mercy was a strength even greater than steel. At last, Serac spoke, his voice low but resolute. "Admiral Ramirez. The Dominion does not kneel. But neither will it forget." A pause, then Ramirez's quiet reply, "That is all we ask." And as the fleets parted, the Dominion carrying scars of pride, humanity carrying the weight of mercy, the galaxy itself shifted. For in the abyss where even light had failed, two civilizations had touched hands. And neither would ever be the same again.